We are in the last days before the election, and the authorities are preparing for it. Are you preparing as well? Well, stick around for the rest of the video. We're going to talk about what the authorities are doing to prepare for the election day chaos that they expect, and some tips about what you can be doing right now to make sure you stay on top of it. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're talking about how we're in the last days before the election and how the authorities are preparing for the day of the election as well as days after the election, and the fact that they're doing it means you should probably be doing it too. And if you're here to prepare and you're on this channel because you're worried about SHTF preparedness of any kind and you're worried about what might happen on the election, hit the subscribe button below because we are in the final countdown and it is an interesting time to be in. We have to stay prepared and stay on top of what's possible, even if it's unlikely in your area. The authorities are preparing for all kinds of civil unrest when it comes to what's happening on election day. And we should be preparing as well, because anytime the authorities are actually concerned about something and actually preparing for it proactively, it should give us a warning sign that says, you should probably do it too. Just think of all the times that there's been military drills executed around cities and provinces where they cut the power, or maybe they operate at nighttime, or maybe that they're doing things in the sense of controlling traffic and controlling the flow of the population. It's all in preparation for things that they expect to happen. And this is happening right now surrounding the election. And I was sitting here tonight, yes, it is Halloween, and I want you guys to be having a good time. And of course, you know, if you have kids like I do, you probably already took them out, did some trick-or-treating, and now you're ready to get back to business like I am. Well, I started sitting down and thought, what's some of the things I can start doing? And I started loading some magazines because it's just one of those things that kind of gives me peace of mind, and empty magazines make me sad. So I got to make sure that they're filled up because I'm a cup half full type guy. But that being said, the authorities are preparing as well, and they are probably loading a lot of magazines right now just in case things get out of control. So what are the authorities doing? What exactly are some of the things that they're working on when it comes to quelling any election day chaos? Well, Chicago, for example, has implemented a 10-day election day security plan, which starts today on Halloween, and it goes all the way until November 10th. So their thought process is that for 10 days around the election, they need to be on high alert. So no police are going to have days off, and everybody's going to be called to action and be at work ready to go in case there's any type of civil disturbance. They even did an all hazards drill recently to make sure they could game plan some of the different scenarios they're expecting around the election. So if Chicago, yes, they have a lot of problems there, but if Chicago is putting together a 10-day plan, maybe us as people who are more prepared should be thinking about those 10 days as well. Because clearly those who are in the realm of authority, if you want to call it that, feel that there's a 10-day window they really have to be on top of. And maybe that's the same situation we should be looking at as well. Something to consider, okay? The other thing that we should consider is that Baltimore is creating and planning a bunch of procedures and how they're going to allocate resources to any of the unrest that they expect. Now, yes, these are two major crime-ridden cities that definitely have their hands full when it comes to things like protests and riots and everything else related to the unrest. But either way, if this is what they're planning for and they're allocating resources towards the idea that they have a feeling things are going to get a little tense around the election, then we should plan accordingly. So it's just something to keep in mind. I just want to keep you up to date on what the proactive actions that these people are taking in different areas in order to quell any unrest or, you know, stay away from any unnecessary chaos, what it is they're doing and how we should maybe apply it to ourselves no matter what area you're in. Of course, if you live in a rural environment, you have less to worry about than those of us in the urban environment. But this community has people from all different areas. So I always try to cover things that could affect anyone, not just those of us who live on property out far away from people, okay? So something else to consider is that a lot of retailers are treating the election day as if it's like a natural disaster, as if it's like a hurricane. They're going to be boarding up their stores. They're going to be closed on election day and even the day after in many cases when it comes to big time retailers like Nordstrom, or when it comes to places like Ulta Beauty, like they're deciding to not only close their stores, but in many cases board up the windows. Of course, it's based on region. So they're going to be looking at their major metropolitan stores first and definitely making sure they implement those changes there. And then they're going to move on from where else they feel there could be some disturbances. Now, that's something interesting because I'm not sure when the last time an election prompted a bunch of stores and retailers to actually shut their doors, aka literally give up sales that they could be generating, especially right now during the pandemic, needing those additional sales, and to actually board up their windows. Some of these stores probably don't even board up their windows when there's a hurricane. So it is something to consider because people are literally throwing money in the trash in anticipation that it's going to be worth it compared to actually being open. Something you have to keep in mind because it might be the same situation for you. Maybe you're a small business owner. Maybe you have a shop that's in a highly populated area. Maybe it's not the best day to be open. If companies like Ulta Beauty and Nordstrom are going to say, you know what, we're not even going to be open on those days, it's because they have data and they have research, because they have big time insurance policies that are telling them this is the best idea to mitigate risk. And you should definitely keep that in mind. Now, we even know about Walmart saying they were going to remove all firearms and all ammunition from their stores just in case things were to happen. Now, I think they reversed that decision. Well, they did, but still, the idea that they even thought that that was a move they needed to make should concern us. How many people out there who are not prepared have said, well, when things get bad, I'm going to go to Walmart, and that's where I'll get a shotgun and plenty of ammunition. Those people are probably some of the major concern that those stores are having, because those people might think that that's the time to do that, and that's going to be an issue, okay? And of course, opportunists and looters are going to be looking for things that are of high value, including firearms, but just saying that we've all heard that conversation before. And guess what? Maybe that's the worst plan ever, which most of us already knew, but it might even be worse than we thought, because before a big emergency SHTF scenario, looks like Walmart might just get rid of all that stuff anyway. So keep that in mind, okay? Now, the other thing we have to consider is because of what these retailers are doing, authorities are even closing down streets in certain areas. It was reported in Beverly Hills that they're going to actually close down Rodeo Drive in order to just make sure there's less of a problem there when it comes to protests and riots and looting and everything else related to it. Well, that's a major area. It's a major shopping destination, and it's a very high-class, expensive area. They're just going to shut it down for an entire day, and I believe the day after as well. And that is something to consider. If the authorities are literally shutting down streets, okay, we're talking about closing off certain areas because of what they expect to happen, it should concern you to a certain degree at least. And consider this, maybe some of you even work on Rodeo Drive. I don't know, but if you do, now you know that street probably won't even be open. So things you have to keep in mind. And if that's part of your escape route, which I'd be kind of concerned if anyone's escape route was Rodeo Drive, but if it was, now you would know that there's a possibility of your street that you have to take in order to escape the area you're in might be shut down. And that can happen all over the country in different areas on different streets for different reasons. So when we see one thing happen, like Rodeo Drive being closed down, it doesn't mean it's the only thing like that happening, but some of the other stuff might not get the press because it doesn't have the influence that Rodeo Drive has. Try to keep prepared, stay on top of that, okay? Now, the National Guard. We all know the National Guard is on high alert. They're ready to go. Well, back in September, they actually created a new unit of the National Guard for a rapid response reaction team. And the whole point of this unit is to quell civil unrest. It's to be deployed quickly to the areas that they're needed and to stop the unrest from happening, okay? So this unit was created in September in preparation for the election. It's not like they created the unit in just some kind of happenstance and said, oh, by the way, the election's here, so it's a good thing we made that. They planned on needing this unit on election day. And this is nationwide. So what's interesting is that they might even have to deploy towards Washington, D.C. without governor authority, because that's not how Washington, D.C. works, but they're planning on having to do that as well. And that's definitely something we have to watch out for, because when things start happening in the nation's capital, it definitely trickles down to the rest of the country. So, new unit in the National Guard specifically for Election Day. Now, the other thing that the National Guard is doing is they might have unarmed poll workers in civilian clothing for making sure that things stay peaceful at the polls. And that is something that is also interesting because basically when you're out voting on November 3rd, you might actually be standing right in front of a National Guard member and not even know it. So they're actually even planting people at this point in different areas to make sure that things happen in a certain way. Things to consider, not everybody you might run into the street on November 3rd and even after is going to be your average civilian. So you have to keep those things in mind because this is what's happening. It's being reported. People are talking about it. This is what we need to prepare for, okay? Now, if the authorities are preparing to this degree, okay, and they're preparing to this level of preparation that they feel that there's going to be a need for it in the sense of they know and expect for unrest to occur and things to happen that are going to be a little bit out of control. What are you doing to prepare for it? Are you preparing? Super basic things that you can prepare for right now that can kind of help you stay on top of things. Like what I'm doing here. I'm taking inventory and I said, you know what? Empty magazines. Let's load them up. Do I ever want to be in a position where I have to use anything in these magazines? No, I don't. Do I ever want to be in a position where I need these magazines and they're empty? No, I don't. And in fact, I'd much rather not have that scenario than the previous scenario. So keep that in mind. Check your inventory. Make sure things are loaded up and ready to go, just because if you don't have those things loaded up and ready to go, you're already behind. It's something important that you should look at. Is everything maintained, cleaned, and lubricated that's in your safe? Think of that as being important as well, because wouldn't it be nice to start fresh if you ever find yourself in a situation where you need any of those tools? Would you rather start with something that's dirty and going to fall apart sooner or possibly malfunction? Of course not. So make sure you're taking care of that stuff. Have you checked your bug out bag lately? Are you going to bug out? Hopefully not. Terrible idea in most circumstances. But is your bug out bag ready to go? Have you even looked to see if the batteries and the flashlight you threw in your bug out bag are corroded? Have you checked the food supply in your bug out bag to see if it's expired or not? Have you made sure that you have enough water purification? Have you checked your first aid kit to make sure it's actually capable of treating some kind of a blowout versus just being a Band-Aid? These are things you can do right now to help give you that edge in case things get a little crazy in your area, okay? Check on your local roads if you have to have a bug out plan in place. And when I say that, what I mean is I'm talking to the people who are in apartments in major metropolitan areas that could not escape from something so easily and have to have a backup plan of leaving at least for a temporary amount of time. And if that's the case, check all your resources now and try to verify whether or not streets or public transportation or whatever it is you have to use to leave is going to be available to you during the election time. Because this is something important that you have to check right now. Not just wait until Tuesday, November 3rd, and then go, oh, it looks like I can't leave. That's probably not the best place to be. And when I was looking at these magazines and realizing some of them weren't loaded, I thought, you know what am I doing? I got to make sure that everything's loaded up. I got to make sure everything's tidy. I got to make sure everything's organized. And I got to make sure everything's ready to go. Because Tuesday's coming up fast. And this will probably be the last video that I put out until Tuesday. Because generally, if you haven't noticed, I'm on a schedule of Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So if you don't hear from me before Tuesday, maybe a possible live stream Monday, who knows. But if you don't hear from me before Tuesday, just remember, this is my reminder for all of you. We have talked about this for a long time. And it's here. So, do I think something catastrophic is going to happen overnight on November 3rd? Probably not. Do I think it's still a good idea to be prepared for something being out of the norm for the next at least week, if not longer? Of course. And I want you guys to be prepared just as much as I am, because the more of us that are prepared, the more of us that are of like-minded thought process, and the more of us that can stay ahead of the game, the better off we're all going to be. And that's what's awesome about this community. So thank you guys so much. Please make sure that you do what you got to do to get out there and stay prepared and stay ahead of what's happening. Because if you're out on Tuesday trying to get supplies and everything else, then you might have waited a little bit too long. But still rather you get something than nothing. So do what you got to do. And keep in mind, if you ever want to make me sad, just show me a bunch of empty magazines. So without anything else to say of how we're in the last days before the election, and a quick happy Halloween from me, that's going to be it from Magic Prepper.